Here's the sound.
I'm
Quality.
That makes a difference.
Hopefully. Okay, I guess we should say hi. What's our intro gonna be?
I don't know. Just stop leaning back and forth.
Okay. Should I put my hair back so you can see my legs?
Okay.
Okay.
Hello everyone. My name is Jason, this is Caitlin, and we are finally making this video after Caitlin pressuring me to do it for probably like a year or something.
Yeah, our original plan was to document the process of figuring out what we're doing. But that
because we never really figured it out, and then things kept changing,
and then it just happened all of a sudden, and here we are.
Didn't seem like anybody was going to want to watch something that never seemed to be the same from day to day. So
yeah, but I enjoy the story. I think it turned out pretty cool.
This is kind of a short introduction as to who we are and why we are doing what we're doing, which is we're going on the road. So we have two children, 3-year-old, almost 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old, 15 months, 16 months, something in there. Yeah, they're all basically the same.
Two toddlers.
Yes, two small children. And we basically have sold our house in the last 2 months now. And spent the last month and a half or so renovating a travel trailer. It's a old Keystone Outback,
which we're sitting in now. You can see the window back there,
which we're sitting in. This is our bedroom, and it's the only place that we have that's able to have a door closed
and clean
while they're sleeping.
If it is loud, we have a fan going on.
Yeah, the air conditioning for the first time.
It's
and the kids
well.
are asleep, so we have to close the door
and be quiet. We're still unpacking. This is like moving into a house. We're in the unpacking process. We're in the new process. The difference about this is we've already traveled, what, like 8 hours? 6 hours.
Well, it would be 5 if we didn't have to go 55-ish.
It's true. It's pretty slow, but that's because we have, like you said, 2006 Outback.
So we have a travel trailer, 31 feet inside. I think it's 36 outside from tongue to bumper.
For those that know
if you care about that sort of thing. It's got we'll have to show it to you later when the kids are not sleeping, but it's got a bedroom in here which you can close the door. This is the front of the trailer, and then that direction that direction is a kitchen and living area, and then at the very back is the kids' room, and we spent a lot of time in there renovating. So I'm excited to show that to you when they're awake.
Yes, there's been lots of stuff we've gotten to do. This has definitely been a process.
Maybe we'll just do an overview video of the trailer and the truck in the next video. But for now, this is more of at least intended to be more of a background on why we're doing this. And like, what led us to this point. So
which I wrote it out in a long version for our blog, which I will put the link below for that. But this is supposed to be the shorter version. It's really hard to talk about the shorter version because there's so many things that like happen, which I think is really cool. Basically, God
did things, and then we answered.
Yes.
And that's basically it. So we'll see you in the next video.
Thing about this is, especially Jason, he thought like the whole God calling people and dreams and visions was very weird and out there, and he didn't really. Kind of like people made it up when they said
especially if it was like something fun. Like I always joked with her that if I was going to get sent anywhere, it was going to be to Africa as a missionary, because that was like, I mean, I wasn't totally serious about that, but I just felt like the only callings were things that, you know, you would go and physically do work that you wouldn't necessarily want to do. So I never really put a lot of time or thought into dreaming of, like, you know, maybe the things that I want to do or have wanted to do forever are actually things that God has put in our life to accomplish. So that's been again, the long version is all written out, but the short version is that both of us kind of very different directions went on a sort of a dream journey where just trying to figure out, you know, like what are we doing? You know, what are we supposed to be doing? Are we satisfied where we are? Have we become like complacent where we are? Are there other things that God has put on our hearts that we're not really pursuing because we think it's too hard, or we think it's crazy, or we think it's stupid, or whatever? So from two very different angles, basically, I don't even know where to start.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, you can start with piglets. You can start with
so
Hawaii.
I guess I'll start with where we realized this, and then maybe backtrack a tiny bit.
I guess it technically starts with Top Gear, doesn't it?
Yes, it all starts with Top Gear.
All great stories.
We were at a point, rewind to like October last year, where we felt like we were supposed to be moving physically, you know, out of our hometown, but we weren't really sure where or how or why or, you know, any of those things. But basically we decided to take a trip out to Colorado and Wyoming, because those were a couple of the places that had been on our hearts for whatever reason, for several reasons, but you could read about that too. We took a trip out there. We rented a camper van for
I highly recommend
some
that.
reason. I
He probably
prefer hotels with rental cars, and
or RVs with a bathroom and a heater.
yeah, a heater is nice. Colorado and Wyoming in October is not warm.
Oh, it's cold.
It is during the day. It's like 70 during the day, but in the night it's like 20, and that is unacceptable for some of us. But anyway, we rented like a Ford Transit extended wheelbase van. Nothing special, but they had done some minor conversion inside so that you had a bed and sort of somewhere to cook on a propane stove. If you were standing out back, you'd be, you know, kind of in a tough spot if it was raining outside, I think. But thankfully it was very sunny and very dry the whole time we were there, which is nice, I guess, except for the cold. But anyway, during that trip, the whole point of that trip was trying to pray about where we were supposed to go. So we had a list of cities on that trip that we were going to that we thought maybe God was actually calling us to move to those cities. But contrasting that, like right before we went on that
yeah,
trip.
because originally I was asking Jason if he wanted me to reach out to realtors, because we had a list of homes that were like kind of okay, but it just it wasn't sitting well with you.
It just didn't quite feel right.
And you weren't really sure why. I mean, we go off a lot about, I mean, God just, when he leads us into something, it's very evident by just this. It's so hard to explain.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's supposed to be like that. If it was easy to explain, easy to comprehend, it wouldn't have the power that it has and the magnitude it has to move things. But in that way, we just didn't have that abundant peace.
Yeah.
But 2 days before, I was asking if he wanted to set up listing. He's like, I don't know.
So 2 days before, I guess, sometime short number.
I remember because it was pretty pointed.
I don't remember. But basically, I was like driving home. I had this kind of like, I will say, weird vision thing. But basically like a really strong mental image in my mind that gave me a lot of peace of this scene in probably like Arizona or New Mexico or something. Sort of like a deserty type. But it was us as a family, all four of us, with an RV kind of parked. But it was definitely, in my mind anyway, it was somewhere in the Southwest U.S. But we were in the RV, Caitlin was cooking, I was outside playing, running around with kids or whatever. And I knew that we were like living in this RV. This was, and I don't really remember necessarily any details other than that. But those things like really stuck out to me. Stuck out. But they stuck out to me, and I came home and I was telling Caitlin, like, you know, maybe we're not actually supposed to be moving. Maybe we're supposed to be traveling. And so we were, fast forward a couple days, we went out west. We had this camper van, which is kind of convenient given that we had decided on that.
We'd done that for budgetary reasons.
Yeah, because we laid it all
all out, and it was like, I think $70 to $80 a night to have this camper van.
Yeah, it was much cheaper, like, because the van was also a car, so it was basically the same price as just renting a car, and you also had somewhere, theoretically, if it was warm outside, to stay.
Yeah.
So we had, like, 20-degree sleeping bags for the kids, and that was all an adventure in and of itself, but not terribly important. Another digression. But anyway, we were there. We were going through, kind of praying about stuff. We were driving along, driving through cities. We had Yellowstone, as Yellowstone and Grand Teton is stuff that we had really wanted to hit, because I'd been there as a younger kid, and she hadn't been at all, and I knew that Elliot, at least, Lisette didn't care, but Elliot at least would enjoy seeing the animals.
The buffalo.
The
buffalo.
Yeah.
What do you see?
I see the buffalo.
Whoa.
It's so big. It's a buffalo.
Especially. But anyway, we had been traveling through, weren't really getting, I guess, up through Wyoming at this point, and into Yellowstone. Weren't really getting a lot of peace about things. We'd looked at stuff. We'd sort of like, we'd even looked at a house in one town that we really liked, but we just weren't getting the peace that we felt like we should be. And we got to this point where we were kind of getting irritated with each other, because I was like, I really think it's this RV thing. Maybe.
That's not how I remember
or
it.
I don't even know what this is. And she was like trying to look at houses and stuff, and I just didn't care about the houses.
I think a big part of it was you were like, well, both of us, we were like, oh, it needs to make sense.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make sense, we're not doing it. Which, I mean, that's important, especially if you have two kids. You can't just like get up and go and with no plan.
It's not like we're that flexible.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Except now we're doing this.
Yeah.
But at the time, like, we're like, none of this makes sense. And it was just the point of like, okay. Well, I guess that was the irritating part, where it got like really.
So we got to this point,
irritated.
driving up to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, actually, where Caitlin was pretty irritated with me, and we were both hungry because, for whatever reason, we didn't look and see that lots of the dining rooms are closed in October in Yellowstone.
Yeah, so
because that's like the start of the winter season. But yeah, we had some cheese and maybe some crackers.
And some
yeah, we had very little for lunch because we were like, Google said all these places were open, and Google is not always right. But anyway, we were kind of hungry.
The littlest was asleep.
Yeah, Lisette was asleep. Elliot was angry too because he feeds off of us. And so we kind of parked at this overlook, and I was like, take Elliot and just go. And I would sit in there with Lisette and wait till she woke up.
Which that is the place to get a breath of fresh air.
It's very pretty.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. I mean, I just got up and it was just overwhelming. There was like no one there. Elliot was getting way into it, which I think was one of the most impactful things of that moment, because he didn't like, I don't know, I feel like we tend to look out and, whether you're a scientist, you're looking for the answers as to why the rocks are formed in certain layers, or you're looking out and you're worried about a million things, but all Elliot cared about in that moment was he was looking off a rock, and he turned around to me and he said, God made this? Which is wild, for one thing. He doesn't like normally say that, but he just turned around and he's like, this is so pretty. And he's like, look at all that dirt. But he was just so simple. Like, he walked up, he was like, this is amazing, and he looked at it and he was just in the moment, and he wasn't thinking about anything else or anything like that. And it just, the simplicity of a toddler's mindset is amazing.
Yeah.
So then we walked back and I felt better because I just, was just staring at this beautiful thing. And Elliot was just in full-blown good mood, enjoying everything, and got back to the van.
Yeah. And so, eventually, at some point, maybe immediately after.
Oh yeah, I think we had sat in the van and I said, okay, here's what I got.
Yeah.
Here's what I got. We need, like, what's the dream? Just put aside the reasonings, put aside whatever justifications we have, and make it make sense. Jason, what is God telling you? Like, what is the desire in your heart for? What is this calling? And just say it. And then, I'm pretty sure your exact words. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Oh, I want to be
like the Gornickes.
The Gornickes.
Which, if you haven't seen it, the movie RV with Robin Williams, the Gornickes are the, like, crazy family. I don't necessarily aspire to be crazy. But I like, the dream was living in the RV. Like, that was the dream. And going, like, rewinding way back to my childhood, like, thinking back on this after this moment, it makes loads of sense, actually, because this has been a dream of mine forever. Like, since I started playing with, I used to have little Piglet figures that
they could
did
fit
everything
in the truck.
because they fit well in Legos, and I love Legos. But I mean, even from like 6 or 8 years old, I was building RVs for them, and they were traveling the country, and like, this was what I wanted to do. And I've talked about that many times in many different fashions. When I was in high school, I got introduced to Top Gear, which is fantastic. British Top Gear, not American. The
Not
American
PG,
one sucks. Don't watch it. But back in the day when it was Clarkson, Hammond, and May, was when I had started watching. And there's an episode, the Africa special, for any of you geeks who like cars and would
or just
want to watch. Or
I could care less on cars, but
they have good British humor. But anyway, there's a special episode, which is just like a longer feature-length type episode, where they go to Africa and they rent 3 estate cars or station wagons to people in the U.S. who don't speak that language. But 3 station wagon type cars, and they basically convert the back of them into beds and workshop and travel around Africa on their journey in those cars. And ever since I watched that, it's been my favorite episode of Top Gear for a really long time. But it always stuck with me, and I mentioned to Caitlin many times that I thought that would be really cool to do, to like get a vehicle, probably an SUV or something, convert the back of it, and just travel around, because I've always just wanted to see the country and to see, just everything.
I think, interesting enough, one big thing we got from a trip in Hawaii, which I explain a little bit more about in the blog, because that's a whole other story. But we got back, and we started talking to people, asking different questions like, oh, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? Or if you, like, what would be the best vacation to do with your kids, or anything like that. And the responses we got made us sad, because it was almost like something in our heads switched, where we were suddenly asking, like, well, why not? Because there's so many times you say stuff like that, and that was how it was, like, oh, that'd be so cool to do, but we won't. And then you're like, but why? You're like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense. But you're like,
it's too,
I mean, it was the same way when we decided to go on vacation with a toddler. We were told that it was insane. When we got pregnant, they were like, oh, your traveling days are over. Like, your life's over. You're not dating your spouse anymore. Like, that's it. And then you step back and you're like, but why?
Yeah.
And
it doesn't have to be.
It was one of those things, like the pipe dream.
Right.
The, like, because when we were asking people where they would live, they're like, oh, this state or this state. And I'm like, okay, but what about like Ireland or Iceland? And like, oh, well, I didn't think you meant like out America. Like, that's just way, you can't even think about that. I'm like, okay, but this is a dream. Like, even in your theoretical dream, you're limiting yourself. Yeah. And that was the thing. Like, you limit yourself, you're going to limit what God's doing. And I feel like that was a huge part, because we suddenly just, the beginning of the journey, way back, we started just hands wide open, blank slate, no assumptions. God, just tell us what we're doing. Give us what we're doing if you want us to do something that we're not doing. Yeah. And that's when these crazy ideas started coming in, and they seemed crazy and they seemed totally off the wall until God started making things line up.
Yeah.
And he did, because as soon as he said, I want to be like the Gornicke family, even though that was such a weird statement, it's like, I knew what he was talking about. The vision came back that he had talked about, and the whole van just fell with peace. The kids were quiet. We were quiet. We just stared at each other, and we got so excited. Like, these huge smiles. It was like a weight lifted. Like, that was it. We heard from God. That's what we were doing. Yeah. Which made for a much more fun trip, because we started like boondocking and all. Well, we had to boondock because we weren't going to pay $60 a night on top of what we were paying. But we were like wild camping and boondocking. If you don't know what that is, I mean, you don't have hookups or electric. You're just in the middle of nowhere. But it was beautiful. Which in Wyoming, it
literally is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Wyoming. But we ended up doing that Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado, and all the places. I mean, in Colorado, we ended up camping at a spot where we woke up and saw the Rockies. We saw a canyon. We saw a whole valley floor. Like, it was just,
that was nice.
Yeah, you just can't get to those kind of things.
And then we stayed at the Hyatt in Denver. That was nicer.
Oh, about nicer. I guess the sleeping accommodation. Anyway, it was really cool.
But yeah. So I'd always had that dream, in many different forms and many different ways throughout my life. I've always wanted to do something like this, and I never really, especially after I got married, and especially after we had kids. Because because I did, I think, mention it after we got married, probably. But when we got pregnant with Elliot, it was like, well, I mean, obviously we're gonna do the house and the white picket fence, and even though our picket fence was kind of rotted, but you know, it was there. But like it was kind of like I just resigned myself to, well, you know, maybe when I'm 65 or 67, or whenever the heck you're allowed to retire.
People would tell us, oh, it's good that you had kids when you're young because you'll be able to do stuff when they're gone.
When you're old. But the problem is when they're gone, I'm still working, and it's not like, you know, you never know what life throws at you, or you never know if you're going to make it that far. I mean, it's like...
And it's one of those things we decided to ask, and God said yes.
Yeah.
Because I think being bold enough to ask in the first place is a huge thing.
Yeah. So we're going on the road. We have no house.
That's how.
We have a truck and a trailer.
Yep.
And a dream. And we'll see how that turns out.
And we're hoping to just include y'all.
Our prayer for all of this is that hopefully our journey through this will inspire you to say yes to what God's asking you to do.
Or just live vicariously through us. You can do that
so
too.
There'll be a lot of different things on this channel, I'm sure. It'll be some adventure stories, some kids stories, some my truck broke down and trying to fix it.
Yeah, we are DIY project addicts.
Yeah.
So
the camper's leaking, and we've already had a lot of those things.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll talk through that in another video, but I'm sure it'll be a lot of random stuff. But I hope you will join us along the way, and we're excited to share this next season of life with you.
Make sure to subscribe.
Or don't. It's like I don't subscribe to people,
but you should.
Unless I know them. But
hopefully you know us. If you don't,
if you're interested, subscribe, and you'll theoretically get notified. Although I don't think I've ever actually gotten a notification from YouTube.
It's because you don't subscribe.
I have like 10 people I subscribe to, and I never get notified of any of their videos because I don't really care. So it works because I don't care about their videos. But you know, whatever.
Hopefully you care. If you're like me, you'll care.
Yeah, be like her. It's much more loving.
All
right.
You're good.
Well, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in the next video.
Goodbye.
Bye.